All right, what's up, co-counsels? I'm exhausted this morning. I should have gone to bed early last night. In any event, let's get into this Diddy stuff. We have about 58 minutes. So the government was expected to call Sheree Hayes, Regina Ventura, and Jordan Atkins yesterday. Okay, Hayes is an exotic dancer known as the Punisher, while Regina Ventura is Cassie's mother, and Atkins once worked as a personal chef for Diddy. Okay. Um, and this is from NBC News, the website. All right. So around 6:32 a.m., they reported. Let me see. What did they report here? They reported that the trial would basically kick off with questioning from the personal chef, David James. Apparently, James gave a compelling testimony the day before where he vividly recalled details of his 2 year stint as, at Diddy's side. The witness was emotional at times, shedding tears as he described some of the better days and more rocky times between Combs and Cassie. And then let's see, we don't want no, we're not doing a recap of Don Weir. We're done with that. All right. So David James, an attorney, arrived at court 8:57. So if I don't know anything about this David James person, but it sounds like if he's arriving with an attorney, it sounds like he may have filed a lawsuit um, against Diddy as well. Okay, court was in session 9:23. That's kind of late. Maybe not. Okay. Anyway, so David James returned to the witness stand around 9:24 a.m. Uh and apparently he appeared to be wearing the same blue suit and white shirt as yesterday. I don't know why that's important, but that's a detail they thought pertinent to add. I'm just trying to get to Cassie's mother. Okay. Anyways, 9:37 a.m. David James said he didn't witness any physical violence. What's up, Brooklyn? Did not witness any physical violence between Diddy and his former girlfriend, but testified that he did see a blog post alleging that Combs hit Ventura at a club. Combs allegedly searched James' computer history. What the hell? And became upset, telling James that someone was lying. Why are you going through your personal chef's phone? W- uh, Anyways, the former assistant called it jarring because Combs had never searched his computer history before. I said phone, computer. James looked for the post, he said, because Ventura had been staying at the London hotel for a week and he was tasked with bringing her food. But Cohn's personal staff was the one answering the door, so he did not get to see her. He said he was surprised because he was expecting to see Cassie, who usually answered the door. Okay, so I suppose that is trying to suggest that Cassie may have been in a bad shape physically, or not even, maybe to some extent, it's supposed to show or suggest that Combs was controlling to the extent where he did not want her to be seen publicly because she possibly was blue and black. That's what I'm assuming. So he said he was surprised because he was expecting to see Cassie, who usually answered the door. Ventura testified last week that Combs put her up in the London hotel after allegedly attacking her in the back of a car while leaving an event. She told the court that she didn't feel as if she could leave and that Combs security was present. Okay. Okay, and then around 9:44, NBC reported that James told jurors that Combs didn't travel light and had a long laundry list of items to be packed in his overnight bag. The music mogul's Louis Vuitton regularly carried $10,000 in cash and sometimes much more. Combs' medicine bag included 25 to 30 undisclosed pill bottles, along with Advil. They needed some Advil, Tylenol, Viagra, pills to increase sperm count, and water pills, James said. He later added that a Percocet and ecstasy were in the medicine bag and that he witnessed Combs taking them. The witness also said he was instructed to buy baby oil. Oh my goodness. Okay, so he's the baby oil purchaser. Uh, I don't know. Astroglide and condoms for trips in cash so that Combs could reimburse him personally off the company books. So I suppose they didn't want to use a company card, but why wouldn't Combs just give him the money as opposed to it sounds like the personal chef had to purchase these items with his own money and then get reimbursed. That's just I don't know. Um all right, so David James testified that he walked into a hotel room to deliver items for Combs when he saw Ventura in a hotel bed, wow, with a man he did not know in the room. The former assistant said he was in Miami in 2008 when Combs requested James bring his iPad to the couple's hotel room. When no one answered, James testified that he used his key to let himself in. James said he saw Ventura apparently sleeping with a comforter pulled up to her neck while Combs was in the shower. He testified he saw a man with long hair walk across the room. James said he never spoke to Ventura or Combs about it and that he never had conversations without about their personal affairs. I think it checks out. Combs brought in a lie detector test. Those things are not reliable, and conducted it on James at least twice while James worked as his assistant. There are a lot of signs here, and I mean, if we go back to what is the ESPN Sports lawsuit? I forgot the plaintiff's name in that case. Fig something. Fig something. Uh, some people, or at least a vast majority of people, do have to stay in jobs that seem unstable, abusive. And in this case, I don't even know what to say about this Diddy stuff because people have no choice. But listen, you bring a lie detector test out on me once, you're not gonna have a second chance. I'm just saying that, and I don't even know that I'd actually comply with it. So James told the court that in his first year working for Combs, some money went missing, and Combs had a former FBI agent who specialized in polygraphs to interview him. He said he was intimidating because he had never taken a lie detector test before. He added that the second time he took a lie detector test was after a watch went missing. James also testified that Combs security searched his clothes and drawers when a Cartier bracelet went missing. There, it sounds like there was no trust. James recalled how he once got high on ecstasy at a New Year's Eve party, and Diddy allegedly kept a video of James dancing at the party. James said Combs told him he would keep it in case Combs needed it in the future because it would embarrass James. Okay, so this is where we come to allegations of blackmailing that the government is alleging against Diddy. And I think, did I say James was a personal chef? Well, it's actually personal assistant. So this minor detail could help prosecutors build their greater narrative that Combs allegedly used his business to control people in his sphere. Okay, then we move on to Suge Knight. So James said he was shook after seeing the Desire by Combs team to grab guns and confront Suge Knight at a Los Angeles dinner in 2008. The witness recalled an incident when the team was out getting a late snack at Mel's Drive-In when Combs' confidant D-Rock spotted the Death Row Records chief there and said that MF, that's motherfucking Suge Knight, okay? James said that Combs' team met up with the music mogul back at his house, and he armed himself with 3 handguns to go and possibly confront Knight. The incident, James testified, is what prompted him to quit. Okay, so it got too dangerous. All the other things, him seeing Cassie in the bed with another man while Diddy was taking a shower, um, him, or at least walking into what appeared to be the end of a freak off, him being accused of stealing from Diddy on at least 3 occasions, him being subjected to a polygraph or 2 polygraph tests. That was not enough for him. It took a confrontation of Suge Knight to call it quits. James said he was shaken and that it was the first time as his assistant that he realized that his life was in danger. He said he told Combs' team that he wanted to leave his job, but he would give them 6 months notice so he could train the next assistant. Here's nice. Listen, the purpose of notice, this is terrible, but this is not legal advice. It's not even employment advice. The purpose for giving an employer notice is more so for the employer and not the employee. This man should have just moved on with his life. Okay, so cross-examination. Diddy's defense attorney, Mark Agnifilo, took over David James' cross-examination. I don't know why they phrased it that way. By took over, they saying that he was not initially going to cross-examine David James, or that somebody else was cross-examining and then he jumped in. Anyways, let's move on. He started by asking James why he didn't provide more details on the Suge Knight incident. James responded that the story stopped because he was instructed not to say anything that would incriminate himself. Okay. Agnifilo asked about a prior statement in which James said he was inside the diner, but James said he didn't remember it. Okay, so they're basically trying to challenge whether he was in or outside. Okay, in the mundane, I'm getting distracted. Okay, in a trial filled with lurid and disturbing details of sexual abuse, the promise of mundane questions was welcomed in the courtroom. Okay, got it. In his cross-examination of James, defense lawyer Mark Agnifilo told a witness that he had more mundane questions. James answered that he James answered that he likes mundane questions, drawing laughter from the gallery. James recalled how much he admired Combs and his desire to work for him. How much did they pay this man? James said he wore Combs' clothing line, Sean John, and when he was studying in London in 2004, people would come up to him and ask him where he got his clothing. He said that made him understand Combs' global reach and his brand, and made him want to work for him because Combs was successful and self-made, and he desired Combs' marketing skills. I wonder what David James does for a living now. So Combs' security detail often included a second car when the rap mogul was traveling, David James said, as his team was suspicious of anyone pulling up on him to shoot him. Okay. Uh, uh, I mean, Tupac comes to mind, but let us move on. James testified that people often would try to touch Combs or ask for his autograph. Um, to me, here it sounds like this is possibly the defense trying to justify um, heavy security or armed security. But let us move on. James testified that people often would try to touch Combs or ask him for autographs, which his former boss wouldn't sign. He said staff would sign items and send them out on Combs' behalf. He said he didn't think gracious was a word he would use to describe Combs. The security detail would also tell James something to the effect of, you know what rhymes with tired? What's that, fired? Oh, never mind. I should just read. I'm trying to. Anyways, so it is fired. Though James said he admitted to Diddy, he was tired once after running a red light, but James did not get fired for it. Tired once after running a red light? I don't get that. Um. Oh, so basically saying, I suppose the testimony is supposed to demonstrate that on one occasion he was so tired he ran a red light, but that did not lead to him being fired. I think that's what it's supposed to convey. Anyway, so James disclosed he was testifying under an agreement with prosecutors, though there's been no evidence so far that he would need legal protection. The defense has been pushing James to disclose any deals he might have made with prosecutors to testify, particularly about the Mel's Diner incident, when Combs and his team allegedly armed themselves to look for rapper Suge Knight. So I guess I stand corrected. I had assumed that David James had an attorney somewhat tied to a civil suit against Combs. It turns out the man might have legal troubles of his own. James said he had signed a proffer, a legal agreement that generally protects witnesses from prosecution for what they say on the witness stand. Sounds like immunity to me. But so far, there's been no evidence any crime was committed against Knight by Combs' team on the early morning trip to Mel's diner in Los Angeles that could indicate James needed protection from prosecutors. So are they suggesting that he's not being truthful? I don't know that to be the case because previously he just said that he did not disclose more information about the Suge Knight incident because he had fear of self-incrimination. But again, if he does have immunity, depending on the type of immunity he has, he certainly could have gotten on the stand and divulged the details of whatever criminal conduct he may have engaged in. All right, so let us move on. Okay, so defense pushes James on altercation with Combs' personal chef. Am I mixing up the names here? I don't know. Anyway, so David James testified to an argument that turned physical between himself and Combs' chef after what Diddy told James couldn't put his hands on a woman. James told the court he was in Miami in Diddy's kitchen when the chef told him how to do his job. The former assistant admitted to grabbing her wrist. Okay, so the chef is a woman. Admitted to grabbing her wrist and telling her to stay in her lane. James said Diddy heard about it and called him into his room. He said he told Combs what happened, and Combs told James he couldn't put his hands on a woman. I suppose this is coming out on cross-examination, and it's meant to convey to the jurors that Diddy was against men putting their hands on women. But it sounds like if we are to accept this to be the truth, we've seen the video, okay? There have been allegations of Diddy beating up on Cassie, and apparently Danny Kane alleges that Diddy hit her, and I believe Carrie Morgan said Diddy hit her. I don't know where the defense is going with this, if this is in fact being elicited on cross-examination. And we've seen the video, so I don't know that this helps Diddy. In anyways, it was on two occasions when Combs warned James that he could be fired. James testified. The one time was when James smoked marijuana. Okay, so he can take ecstasy, dance, and his employer would record him, keep the tape as collateral, but smoking marijuana is the thing that could get you fired. I don't know. Okay, so Combs didn't always get along with his former, not. Oh, hold on. Let's get back. Combs didn't always get along with his former personal chef, Jordan Atkins, James said. After one physical confrontation between Combs and Atkins in Alpine, New Jersey, Combs asked James to report Atkins to police. Okay. But James said he didn't file it because he didn't want to make a false report. Yet he told Combs that he did it. Okay. All right. So Combs' former personal assistant is finished testifying, and the government has called its next witness, Regina Ventura. Ventura's mom has been sworn in, and prosecutor Emily Johnson will begin the questioning. That was around 11:41 a.m. 12 p.m. Prosecutors revisited an email Ventura sent to a mother in December of 2011 that said Combs threatened to release explicit videos of Ventura after he learned she was dating Kid Cudi. Regina Ventura said she was physically sick and didn't understand what was going on, but Diddy was trying to hurt her daughter. She testified that Combs wanted $20,000 for the video. She said Combs was angry that he had spent money on Cassie Ventura and that she was with another person. Okay. Regina Ventura said she took out a home equity loan to pay for it. The money was returned to her several days later, she told the court. I know. There's a lot to unpack here. There's a lot to unpack. Okay. So around 2011, this is, if my timeline is correct, this is about 7 years before they completely break things off. Around that time, uh, the mom receives an email. So December of 2011, Regina receives an email about Combs basically threatening to release explicit videos. Listen, I guess maybe I was gonna talk about Kim, but I suppose Kim might be the only person to actually really benefit from a sex tape, apart from uh, people that specialize in that type of art. Uh, and this was basically, or at least they're alleging that Diddy threatened to release these videos because Ventura, or because he learned that Cassie was dating Kid Cudi at the time. Okay. Here's the thing, though. At least Cassie was comfortable enough to reach out to her mother. Uh, Part of me is like, she should have just dared the man to release the videos, because I don't know that he would have done so. Maybe he would have done so. Um, in any event, so Diddy basically wanted $20,000 from Regina in order for him not to release the, what is this? The explicit videos. And once Diddy received the money was reversed back to Regina. They have a lot going on. Okay, so Regina Ventura said she took photographs of her bruised daughter in late 2011 to make a record of the alleged beating at the hands of Diddy, who was the boyfriend at the time. The mother said her daughter was bruised and the photos were taken that December. Regina Ventura once called the police on Combs after her daughter Cassie told her that Combs had taken her phone. Ventura testified that she had a bitter argument outside her daughter's apartment building as she tried to get the phone back. Ventura was inside her apartment at the time, she said. She said she was trying to hit Combs, but was unsuccessful, like physically hit or call. Eventually, Regina said Diddy gave the phone back and took her daughter's car as he left. What's up, Callie girl? I know. What time is it over there? Because I'm out here gossiping early in the morning. But this is the only way I can catch up with all this Diddy stuff, because I'm really focused on I'm focused on, oh, who's this? Karen Reed. What I'm surprised about, though, I for sure thought that a lot of people might be more tuned into the Diddy trial as opposed to the Karen Reed trial, but the numbers are different. The numbers paint a different picture. But I'm now wondering if people are more focused on Karen Reed because they actually can see what's happening in the courtroom, whereas with Diddy, folks have to rely on reporting. Anyways, so on to cross examination. Defense attorneys chose not. Wow. Defense attorneys chose not to cross examine Cassie's mother, allowing her damaging testimony to stand uncontested. What? Why would they do that? Okay, so it's around noon for you, 12:25. Why would they do that? So apparently, defense attorney Mark Ignifilo said, I do not have any questions for you. Regina Ventura's testimony about Combs threatening her daughter over a sex tape and abuse was left uncontested. Why would they not challenge that? From a defense perspective, that is just, because here's the problem. Sure enough, um, Nicole Westmoreland did something with the cross examination of Don, and they've challenged other witnesses, but to leave Regina's testimony uncontested, basically her testimony is really about Diddy threatening to release explicit videos of Cassie and him asking for $20,000. The argument, or actually him basically withholding her phone and taking her vehicle, and then the abuse, the photographs, and they are not challenging. I guess that's in line with their argument of this being domestic violence. I don't even know. I don't. Okay. Why wouldn't you challenge that? Anyways, so next, next the government moved on to a male exotic dancer nicknamed the Punisher. Okay, so the government's next witness is a man named Sheree Hayes. Hayes is 51 years old. He works as an exotic dancer who goes by the name the Punisher. The male stripper, nicknamed the Punisher, said he was paid $800 to create a sexy scene for Combs and Ventura, all while keeping eyes off the music mogul. Hayes said he was called to a Trump Tower hotel. Mm, Let me keep it moving. He was called to a Trump Tower hotel suite in the fall of 2012 and was greeted at the door by Cassie wearing a bathrobe and nothing on underneath, and she had a wig. He was handed a sack of money with $800 inside as Ventura told him to create a sexy scene of me and her applying baby oil on. Oh, so they were applying baby oil on each other? And that's what I said, Kelly. I said, let me leave it alone. Because we can go down a rabbit hole, but we're gonna leave it alone. So they were applying baby oil on each other, and they created a scene or a sexy environment that her husband would come upon, the witness said. She told Hayes not to acknowledge Combs, try not to look at him, and have no communication with him, he said. Okay, so it sounds like Diddy was in the room. Diddy was in the room, and these two were to apply a baby oil on each other and create a video. They could have just put up a tripod. That they could have done that. Anyway, so I don't know. I have so many questions. I have so many questions about these individuals. Let us move on. So they had a lunch break. And then Cassie's parents departed from the federal courthouse. Let's get back to the Punisher. The first encounter with Ventura and Combs led to a healthy tip and more gigs. A healthy tip and more gigs, Hayes said. She said thank you and was handed more money. I think this is probably going to this is coming in to support sex trafficking charges, but let's see. I think somebody's crossing state lines here, but let's get into it. She said thank you and was handed more money, which he counted in the elevator and realized it was $1,200. Okay, so he got an additional $400. I wonder how long was this for, though? How long did they have to film this sexy scene? Hayes said of that first encounter at Trump Tower, adding that he now knows one of his clients was Sean Combs. Okay, so does this mean was Diddy in the room or not? Because if he's being told not to look at this individual, is there an individual in the room or not? I don't know. Anyways, in total, Hayes estimated he performed for the couple from 8 to a dozen times. So if he performed for the couple, is this in person or is he referring to the recording? His reporting is not very clear. Okay. So he said he was called to the first hold on. He said he was called to the first rendezvous by a woman who called herself Janet. But it didn't take long for him to realize who his clients were. One of the biggest names in the music industry and his well known girlfriend. Hayes said he eventually saw Combs' face and that Combs wore a baseball cap, adding that he is a fan of the rapper and follows him on Instagram. So during the time of Instagram. Hayes said he got the nickname the Punisher as a teenager because of his prowess on the basketball court. Okay, so they have a picture of Mr. Hayes here. Mr. Hayes is a bald-headed man. Is a bald-headed man. Um, all right, so David James. So why are we going back to David James at 1:35 p.m.? Let's just keep reading. Let's keep reading. I still have questions about the Punisher though. I have questions about the Punisher. Anyways, um, around 1:35 p.m., they're reporting that David James, Combs' former personal assistant, testified earlier today that the mogul once asked him to file a police report alleging Combs' personal chef assaulted him. Didn't they just cover this like a few hours back? Anyways, James told the court he didn't do it because he didn't want to make a false report. The incident occurred in Alpine, New Jersey, blah, 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 blah. Record of 911 calls to Combs' former Alpine residence obtained by NBC News show that police were called March 22 of 2008 over an issue with the personal chef. It is unclear if this was the same incident James was referring to when he didn't file a report. A man named David James told police the chef was fired and left upset, but stated that there was no threat made by her, according to the report. Police advised Combs and James that it was a civil matter. Mr. Combs was satisfied and didn't want to make this a matter of record due to his celebrity status, the report said. So I'm confused. Is this being brought in to say that David James lied about not making a report? Or I don't know. I don't know why they reported it this way. Around 2:11 p.m., they reported that in a dozen or so sexual performances, Hayes, yeah, that is confusing. So if the Punisher's on the stand around 12:54 and he's testifying about the number of times that he performed for these people, why is NBC reporting about the police report? Anyways, let us move on. In a dozen or so sexual performances, Hayes never had the sense that Ventura was uncomfortable with it at all. Okay, he testified. The sex worker agreed with defense attorney Xavier or Javier, depending on how you want to pronounce it. Uh, li- Hold on. So, defense attorney basically questioned Hayes about whether Ventura was in any discomfort while performing in front of Combs. He said it seemed like it was consensual, agreeing with Donaldson's description of Combs as a director of the scene. So I suppose Combs is the one that was telling them what to do, and Mr. Exotic Dancer and Cassie were complying. All right. So I'm distracted, but I'm looking at the actual photograph of Mr. Hayes and the sketch. The sketch looks nothing like this man. It looks nothing like this man. Um, in any event, so in a brief redirect, Hayes was asked more about Ventura's time during their sex scenes with Combs. Prosecutor, I guess, was he engaged in? This is more than just baby oil rubbing. Anyways, a prosecutor, Meredith Foster, asked about the one time Ventura appeared to enjoy herself, but also asked Hayes about the other times where she would apparently wince and sigh. Foster asked whether Ventura's focus was on Combs. Hayes said there was a consistent awareness to Combs and his perception and his desires of the moment. Hayes then left the witness stand. This does not really clear up much for the prosecution. The only thing this could possibly do for the prosecution is corroborate um, Cassie testifying that initially she was into it and later on she was not. So it depends around when the Punisher was called, when these acts were occurring. in terms of timeline? Was it at the very beginning of the relationship, or did this happen later on? As you get closer to the intercontinental surveillance footage. All right, so Mr. Hayes left the stand. Special Agent Gerard Gannon, the government's 10th witness today, took the stand. That was around 2:26 p.m. Gannon worked for Homeland Security Investigations and was responsible for the overall planning of the raids on Combs' Miami home. Okay, so prosecutors brought up photos of Diddy's home. As Special Agent Gerard Gannon explained how agents executed search warrants on the Miami property. He told the court the property's extensive size required dozens of people to search the 20,000 square foot home. He noted that agents cleared the house and were assigned in teams of two to search each room. Photographs were taken Photographers were taking photos of items before they were bagged with a description of each item and where it was found. Gannon said it was his job to compile an itemized list and that he went through every piece of evidence to break it down into categories. Okay, so the court was adjourned for the day. So I suppose when they resume today, Gannon is going to take the stand. We're probably going to hear about more what he says, baby oil, the pink cocaine, and everything else that they were covered. Actually, now that I think about it, I suppose this is the day that the prosecutor pretty much digs into if any surveillance tapes were recovered at all. Not even surveillance, more so just videos. If those were recovered and what was on them. That's probably where the prosecution is heading. Anyways, Kid Cudi is expected to take the stand. What he's gonna say probably is going to relate to his relationship with Cassie, and I would like to believe that maybe he's going to say that they broke up. No, isn't he the one on the allegations that Diddy blew up his car? Maybe that's where they're heading. Maybe that's where they're heading. So let us move on. So guns were seized from Combs by federal agents in Miami, and they had some scratched off serial numbers, making it more difficult for authorities to trace a weapon's history. A federal agent said the government presented pictures of seized goods to Special Agent Gannon, who led the search in Miami of Combs' properties. Prosecutors also showed Gannon pictures of weapons, bullets, and magazines, as well as sex-related items. What are the sex-related items? Let's go. All right, so this is a recap according to NBC. This is apparently where the sex trafficking trial stands. David James, and that's the thing, going back to the Punisher, Mr. Hayes, there's no what I'm interested in as an attorney. I would have wanted to know where Hayes was actually flown into. I mean, apparently it's a Janet that reached out to him, but where is Hayes coming from? Is he coming from New Jersey going to New York City? Is going from uh, New York City going to New Jersey or some other part of the country? Um, what exactly were those arrangements, right? Because I don't know that we have enough information on that. But going back to that recap, though, David James, the former personal assistant to Diddy, took the stand. He was followed by Cassie Ventura's mother, Regina, and a male exotic dancer, Sheree Hayes, whose nickname is the Punisher. They have to emphasize that. Regina said she documented her daughter's bruises, allegedly received at the hands of Combs. Once called police on Combs when he took Ventura's phone, and that Combs demanded $20,000 in exchange for sex tapes with Ventura on them. The money was later returned. The government is expected to call Combs' former chef, Jordan Atkins, to the stand. Oh, she did not get on the stand, or maybe she did. If she did, it's not reported by NBC News. So, okay, so Combs faces 5 counts We need to actually really go back to that indictment. All right. Okay, let's see. And then they have a hotline here for sexual assault, and they want you to sign up for a newsletter. I don't know. These reports to me have not been helpful, and that's just because it does not answer the legal questions that I have. But then again, part of the reason why these reports probably do not answer the legal questions that I have is a possibility that the prosecution has not put on uh, or has not presented a case that answers the legal questions that I have. That's a real possibility. Okay. There's really nothing that because I'm trying to see if any other outlet. Um, I'm trying to see if any other outlet reports this better than NBC because I just have way too many questions. I have too many questions. Okay, let's go to USA Today. We have about 13 minutes. I was gonna end early, but let's see if we can get some clarity. We have ABC. Man, everybody's talking about the Punisher. Literally, this is how they're talking about how Hayes went by the Punisher. All right, let's go to USA Today. Maybe they have a better account of what happened in court today. Um, Let us see. So here's what they were reporting. A stream of witnesses in Sean Diddy Combs' federal sex crimes trial gave emotional testimony on the one-time mogul's alleged physical, sexual, and emotional abuse as prosecutors lay out their case. Regina Ventura, the mother of Combs' ex-girlfriend, Cassie Ventura Fine, told the court on May 20 she was physically sick over the rapper's alleged abuse and said she was once pressured to send him $20,000 after he raged at her daughter. I was scared for my daughter's safety, Ventura told jurors. Okay, so that's an account that we did not um, get from the ABC news story. So Callie's wondering if Wale would testify. I don't know. What would he testify to? This case has too much going on. Okay, so again, an account that we're getting from USA Today that's not reported in the NBC. Was that NBC or ABC? I don't remember because I've looked at both. Was that the mother was actually scared for her daughter's safety? Okay, so David James, who worked for Combs from 2007 to 2009, took the stand on May 20, telling the court he feared for his life in one intense incident. Okay, that's the Suge Knight stuff. We're not gonna read that again. Okay. Oh, Kid Cudi actually has a real name. So no, because I read they were like a Scott Muscati, and I was like, who's that? So Scott Muscati, better known as a rapper Kid Cudi, is expected to take the stand this week. Combs allegedly threatened the musician after he and Ventura Fine dated briefly over a decade ago. I guess that's what I was expecting. Combs, 55, was arrested in September of 2024. We know that. Okay. The special agent describes raiding Diddy's home. All right. Let's just go to a law and crime quickly. All right. Let's see if they have. Let me share my screen. Let me share my screen. Callie, if you have time, you have to watch last night's live. Because this Mr. Burgess was, I don't know. He very problematic. Problematic for the Commonwealth.
The federal trial of Sean.
Alessi did a fantastic job. Alessi did a phenomenal job um, cross-examining him. I'm not gonna, if you did not watch the actual testimony, I'm not gonna spoil it for you. But let's
From
yeah.
disturbing footage to allegations of physical violence to
Okay.
damning texts, we are breaking down some
I'm gonna
of
have
the
my breakfast
biggest blows to
quickly.
the defense so far in the Sean Diddy Combs sex crimes trial. As we are in the
Right,
heart of
because as I was reading headlines yesterday, because yesterday my focus was really on Karen Reed, but as I was reading headlines, the headlines were talking about how damaging the testimony against Diddy was, and maybe it was, but based on what I have read, or at least what we read here today, I don't get that sense. Sure enough, there are allegations of um, violence against Cassie, but I just my my questions have not been answered. I would like to know who was being flown in. Like, even when it comes to Mr. Hayes, the third charge, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, the third count relates to basically procuring sex workers and transporting them across state lines in order to engage in sex work. I did not get that from Mr. Hayes because I do not know where he was transported from. Did he Was he already in the state where this act was occurring, or what exactly was going on? So Callie said Wale was supposed to do a song with Cassie. Folks told him to stay away from Cassie. But while recording, he started being friends with Cassie. Okay, Diddy didn't like that and had him dangle outside a window. What on earth? Wow.
of week 2, we discuss these potential losses for the defense, but don't be so quick to think that this is a straightforward conviction. Welcome to Sidebar,
Okay.
presented by Law and Crime. I'm Jesse Weber.
Yeah.
We're now in week 2 of the Sean Diddy
So
Combs
why does this say 5 major blows to defense though? If he's saying don't be so quick. Anyways,
criminal sex crimes trial. And one of the things that I have been wondering has been some of the pieces of evidence that have proved potentially problematic for the defense, meaning, are there defense losses? And by the way, this is coming from somebody who said that I think the prosecution's case is not a slam dunk. It's complicated when you talk about racketeering and sex trafficking. Those elements are not so straightforward. It's not just the jury accepting that Combs allegedly beat an alleged victim up or sexually assaulted them. These aren't state charges. These are federal charges. They're very, very specific elements that the prosecution needs to prove. Like for sex trafficking, you need to prove that Combs recruited, harbored, transported, maintained victims to engage in commercial sex acts by using force, fraud, and or coercion. Racketeering conspiracy, the top count. Criminal enterprise.
Yeah, that's problematic right there. Because I'm eating my breakfast, I'm sorry. But Mr. Hayes pretty much said or testified that Cassie looked like she was enjoying herself. So, and Hayes was definitely not forced into it, or it sounds like he was not forced into it. And that's always been the problem for me when it comes to the prosecution's case here. The big problem is so much so there's nobody else that's tied to these allegations. What I mean by that is you do not have a co-defendant. You do not have anybody else that's working in cahoots with Diddy unless they're really arguing that Cassie was that other individual. And if Cassie was that other individual, then they must be arguing that initially she was a part of this elaborate scheme or whatever, and then later on she turns victim. But when she turns victim, you don't have anybody else. You don't have a second participant that is working with Diddy. So I don't know. Prosecutors, I don't know. Because I was gonna say usually, okay, usually prosecutors only go go for cases that they know without a shadow of a doubt that they can prove, right? And the Department of Justice has been dealt several blows lately, and we're not even going to talk about not going to talk about what the orange one has been doing. And I don't want to attribute the Diddy case to the orange one, but I do think I was just thinking about this about 2 days ago or so, how their statistics, the government statistics are pretty much dropping already because they've been dealt several blows, and that extends beyond just the criminal cases, but they have not been succeeding out there. Right.
Pattern of racketeering activity with at least 2 underlying crimes like forced labor, kidnapping, arson, sex trafficking, bribery, criminal agreement to do this. It's high burden. It's a high burden. Can the prosecution meet it? But putting all of that to the side,
okay,
the prosecution has been quite deliberate and methodical in what witnesses they have called and the evidence they have presented. So with that, I want to touch upon 5 of the biggest blows to the defense so far, 5 of potentially the biggest losses so far to them. So for that, I'm not going to do it alone. So for that, I want to bring on trial attorney Andrew Stoltman to talk more about this. Andrew, thank you so much for coming here on Sidebar. Appreciate you taking the time.
Anytime. Thank you.
So first, before I go into the losses or potential losses to the defense, you would agree with me, this is not a slam dunk clear case for the prosecution, at least with respect to the racketeering and sex trafficking charges, right?
Yeah, there's no question. With respect to the most serious charges, which are the racketeering and the sex-related charges, it's an uphill climb for prosecutors. Mm-hmm. And so I was a little surprised when these charges got filed at the federal level. And so I'm really watching this carefully. Prosecutors have scored some points, but they still have a really long way to go.
Yeah, because a lot of this alleged activity, this alleged behavior would have made up state charges for assault and battery and potentially rape and things of that nature. But, there's statute of limitations issues. So how do you transform it into a federal case? Charges like this. But I want to talk about the defense, and I want to talk about some problems for the defense. So number one, physical violence. It seems to me the prosecution has done an exceptional job of proving physical violence. And when we talk about force, right, and force, fraud, and/or coercion in the sex trafficking count, or using force to cause victims to engage in freak-offs, right, Cassandra Ventura Fine testified that Combs would kick her, stomp her head, drag her. The 2016 tape of Combs appearing to beat her up at the LA Intercontinental Hotel. There were photos of her alleged injuries. Text messages from Cassie to Combs can also arguably prove this. For example, there's one that says, "I'm not a rag doll, I'm somebody's child." Another message, "You are sick for thinking it's okay to do what you've done. Please stay far away from me." Dawn Richard testified that she observed Combs physically abusing Cassie, told her to leave, but apparently was afraid to get involved for her own safety, that she saw injuries on Cassie. Cassie's former best friend, Kerry Morgan, testified she saw Combs be violent with Cassie in 2 separate incidents. Daniel Phillip, a man allegedly hired by Combs to have sex with Cassie, testified he saw Combs drag her into a room and then heard slapping sounds. The defense even...
Okay, I did forget. I forgot about that one. I think that was part of the recap from Monday, so that's testimony from last week. Okay, so at least when it comes to Phillips, it can certainly be argued that at least on that one occasion, Cassie was not a willing participant and that she was forced into it. So maybe because you only really need one. No, you don't need one incident. This is RICO. We need more than that.
Even conceded that Combs was violent and seemingly admitted he engaged in domestic violence. So Andrew, if I'm correct, and tell me if I'm wrong here, but if I'm correct, why is this so vital to the case? And am I right that this could be a loss for the defense?
Absolutely. There are jurors on this case who have probably made up their mind already simply based off of the video of him beating his...
Okay, I hope that's not the case. And this is not in defense of Diddy, but in order for the process to work as it should, jurors have to listen to everything in order or before they make up their mind. So at least that's a standard.
Girlfriend in the hotel room. There are a lot of jurors who just look at testimony, they look at evidence, they look at the video, right? There's the old saying, the eye in the sky doesn't lie. And when they saw Combs smacking her, kicking her, hitting her, there are a lot of jurors out there that probably said guilty at that point, even before they heard all the evidence. It's not a good look. It's a horrific look. And one of the things you do as a criminal defense attorney is you try to create sympathy for your client in the eyes of the jurors. Now, we don't know a lot about these jurors. It seems like they skew male. They're a little bit older. But there are a whole bunch of people out there that have convicted Sean Combs as soon as they saw that video.
That's why I wanted
beating
to
his
look at
girlfriend.
the,
So you're talking
comments.
from an emotional standpoint, right? Not necessarily looking at the elements of the charges, right? Because that was going to be one of the big concerns of the defense is about this tape. And I'll talk about the tape in a moment. But what you're saying is not even a legal point of view. When the jury hears about this alleged violence, they may want to convict him because of that, not necessarily because it's racketeering or sex trafficking.
Yeah, absolutely. And the more conservative the jurors are, the more likely they are to simply shut down, have that curtain go in front of them and disregard the jury instructions, disregard the rest of the testimony, the defense's case, and say, this is a bad dude who beats up women, and there's no question in our mind.
That's why the argument is problematic by the defense. And even yesterday when we listened to Diddy's friend talk, or at least when he was interviewed, how he kept talking about, oh, this is just domestic violence. That's an issue. That is a problematic defense. That is a really problematic defense because they're trying to, at least from a non-legal perspective, they're trying to excuse the conduct. But it could potentially make sense legally. I don't know. I'm trying to figure out what defense could they possibly have come up with that is better. I'm not even sure.
That he's doing it because we've seen him doing it. We're going to go guilty.
Hey everybody, this is another law and crime legal alert. If you receive Depo-Provera birth control,
What on
eligibility
earth?
warrant,
No,
and the
Jesse, come on.
all the time, 100%. Shouldn't happen, but happens all the time. And it would be very difficult to know unless jurors came out after a verdict and said, yeah, we convict him because we didn't like him. We convicted him just because we're like, we want to hold him accountable. I don't really know if it matched up to the elements. I don't know if the prosecution met their burden, but unless they came out and said that. But do you think from a legal point of view, the physical violence or the alleged physical violence, has it established the elements of sex trafficking? Has it helped prove the racketeering charge? If so, how?
Not at all. And I think Diddy's lawyers did a pretty good job in their opening statement saying, look, he's basically a bad guy and he did this stuff. But that's not sex trafficking. Hiring a prostitute is not sex trafficking. Beating up your girlfriend, it's not sex trafficking.
Wait a minute.
Alexa,
the
stop.
Physical violence, doesn't it go to force, fraud, coercion if you tie it to this pattern of sex acts, right? So the 2016 tape, we'll talk about it. I mean, if you're saying that was after a freak off, okay.
Alexa,
if you're saying this is the environment she was around or allegedly around, not only violence, but threats of violence.
I don't know who the sketch artist is, but I don't know. I don't like the way these sketches have been looking.
Doesn't that feed into a sex trafficking count? Remember, it's the idea of transporting her, having these.
Okay, so the transportation is Cassie. Again, I don't know, government. I don't know. And the reason I do not know is because, again, Cassie appears to be, I guess the focus is really on Cassie. She's the victim. She's the one that's being transported. Where initially I thought it is other folks that were being transported. That's still an attenuated argument, though. That's an attenuated argument. I don't know, prosecutor.
Sexual episodes with sex workers who are getting paid, freak-offs happening in multiple locations. I mean, the physical violence doesn't support sex trafficking?
In a vacuum, it does, but the defense has done a good job of introducing some of the text messages from Diddy's girlfriend, talking about how she likes these freak offs, how she wants another one, right? Expressing affection. And if you're trying to establish coercion, I think those sorts of text messages are harmful to the prosecutor's case. And
I mean, it's only to an extent. Maybe harmful to the prosecution to an extent, but if you consider them again, that video is pretty damaging. If you consider them in the context of that video, then I don't know. I guess we need a real timeline of the actual freak offs themselves and when it is that she sent out these text messages. Because again, Cassie testified, or at least it's being reported, that she testified that initially she was into it. So if initially she's into it and she's sending messages about how she enjoyed herself, sure. But then as time progresses, she is getting beat up, kicked, stomped. And we've talked about this before. Even initially, even if it was consensual, there's always that line when somebody taps out, says they don't want to do it again, then you're kind of entering into force and threats, coercion, and it can no longer be argued that it's consensual. It's a difficult case. This is a difficult case. This is probably yeah, this is probably the most difficult prosecution case that we've seen so far this year. This is a difficult case. That's a really difficult case.
And I would expect.
And let me see, which is more difficult, this case or Karen Reed? I don't know. I don't even know that we can have that comparison.
Expect that to be the central point of the defense case. Consent, consent, consent.
Mhm.
These were willing participants. They came back time and time again. Even after they were free and clear, they still came back. So I think it goes to the consent related issue on the coercion charges.
I think from a prosecutorial standpoint, it's going to take people on the jury to understand victims of domestic violence, victims of sexual assault, in order for somebody to actually understand Cassie. So I don't know if they're going to put on an expert. Maybe not. Maybe they just let Cassie's words stand. But this is an uphill battle. Any event, I need to go. I have 10 minutes to get dressed and head on out. All right. So tomorrow morning I will not be live because I'm going in early. But I'll definitely be live tomorrow, 8:30 p.m. Eastern time. We're going to cover the Karen Reed trial. And then on Friday morning, we get back up here and then we talk about Diddy again. So on Friday, we will recap Wednesday and Thursday's testimony. Alexa, stop. You guys have a fantastic day and we will reconvene tomorrow, 8:30 p.m. Eastern time.
Sure, they definitely have